Does not ever want to change.
It's certainly pride that says, I got my way in this, I'll get out of it. That sounds good, but that's not probably the way to get out of that. You got yourself in it for a reason. Maybe I need help outside of me to get me out. Welcome to The Principal Thing. We're Wes and Ashley Miller, where you'll learn wisdom you can live.
Well, hello. Welcome back to the Principal Thing podcast. I'm Pastor Ashley Miller.
I'm Pastor Wes Miller.
We're happy to have you back for another episode of The Principal Thing. We're going to jump right in. We are finishing up the book of Proverbs over these next couple weeks, the book of Proverbs chapter 1, over these next couple weeks. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this out in the reading of Proverbs chapter 1, and then we'll zone in on our key scriptures.
As honey, can I say, Proverbs is known as the book of wisdom in the Bible. If you're needing wisdom, if there is a shortcut, jump into the book of Proverbs. It's a lot, it's meaty, but that's why we're taking it kind of a verse by verse and kind of exploring it and also trying to find us in these verses so that we can practically apply it.
Yeah, and you're here listening to the Principal Thing, so that's going to shortcut you too. All right, so here we go. We're going to read Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 20 and read through verse 33. So I'll read aloud. It says, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open square. She cries out in the chief concourses at the openings of the gates in the city. She speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refused, I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded. Because you disdained my counsel and would have none of my rebuke, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes. When your terror comes like a storm and your destruction comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled with the full of their own fancies. For the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and be secure without fear of evil.
Boy, there's a lot there, my lady. You know, as I hear you going through that, and we'll refer to it in the next few weeks of this last part of chapter 1 of Proverbs, you oftentimes see God speaking, but also speaking as wisdom. In other words, you could say wisdom is a person, and it really is. Mm-hmm. I love to tell people that wisdom is Jesus Christ. So God interchanges the fact that he's talking, wisdom is talking, and even the fear of the Lord is talking.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like that's so interesting as we listen to this as wisdom as a person and understand that wisdom is talking to us. So today's point, I want to jump into this because there's a lot of meat here. I do want to just point out a huge point, and we're starting with verse 20, and there's a lot in there between verse 20 and verse 21 of the idea that wisdom screams. Like wisdom screams out. Wisdom is not silent. Wisdom is not quiet. But today's wisdom point is that wisdom screams seemingly everywhere.
Yeah.
That's in verse 20.
It says wisdom calls aloud outside.
Keep going.
Raises her voice in the open square.
Keep going.
She cries out in the chief concourse.
And then it goes on to say the opening of the gate, and she speaks her words. So the question isn't, is wisdom talking? The big question is, are you listening? I mean, wisdom is always present if you're willing to humble yourself and quit talking and listen. I recently was telling people, it says in the book of James that we should be quick to hear and slow to speak. And, oftentimes we hear people say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But part of the problem of why we can't hear wisdom is because usually either we're talking or we're listening to chatter in our head that can be self-talk or the enemy's talk.
Yeah.
And most of that talk is foolishness when it's compared to God talk. So one of the things I want us to understand, honey, because a lot of times people are like, I'm clueless. I don't know what to do. I don't know. And I really want to say, and I don't mean this to say this in any kind of a harsh way, but are you kidding me? Like, wisdom is screaming. Most of the time when people come to me for advice or counsel, I can't wait for them to finish so that we can start applying wisdom, because wisdom is here and it's present. This isn't going to be hard. We don't got to go, 3 weeks or 4 weeks to try to figure out an answer. Like, wisdom is crying out. And most of the time, that doesn't take a pastor's office or a psychotherapist or a counselor or psychologist to sit with you and a therapist. Everyone can hear wisdom. It doesn't take an in between to hear wisdom. And so I just really want to encourage people. I promise you, the Bible tells us wisdom seemingly is screaming, crying everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's a loud voice. That's part of what it says. It's not a soft voice. It's not a meek voice. It's a strong voice. Think about the next time you're in a board meeting or somewhere when you're in an employee meeting, or you're in an arrangement where you're talking to somebody. Like, are you listening for wisdom? Because it's here.
Yeah. What I was thinking about when you were talking about, but are we listening, was the fact that when we hear screaming, I don't think you can help but hear it, right? So if something's talking loud, you hear it. I think it's more of the idea of, am I ignoring it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because wisdom is crying out everywhere. And that's what I say. And honestly, it doesn't give all these different details, but it gives us enough to realize,
Right.
hey, it's everywhere I'm at. If you think about wisdom in a pit, there's going to be wisdom on maybe learning how I got in here. It may give you the steps to get out of here. The truth is, wisdom is crying out, and there's something we need to glean and gain from it on an ongoing basis. You know, I heard a story one time of a guy that, he rode his a motorcycle. I always liked to do the dirt bike thing when I was younger. And we would
Really?
get out into some fields and some places and just to do, Evil Knievel type ramp jumping and stuff like that, just daredevil things. And we would get off in these places, but oftentimes we'd find our place in a mess where we couldn't get out of it. And I heard a story one time, a guy rode his bike and he got down into a ditch. And yet the ditch was really like quicksand. It was just muddy, and you're not going to be able to climb out. It was much easier to get in than climb out. And I heard the story that a guy came by and he's like, "Hey, you need some help? I've got a truck. I've got a winch mower. I can actually chain you up and pull you out." And the guy said back to him, seriously, and I've seen people like this. He said, "You know what, buddy? I got myself into this. I'll get myself out of it." Now, how many of you know that wasn't wisdom? Wisdom was crying out, "I've got a chain. I've got the resource to pull you out of this pit." But most people want to go back to their way of thinking, which is what got you down there to begin with. And I wonder how many people are listening today that wisdom is crying out, but you're so caught up in your own methods and your ideologies, and
That's
maybe
so
even
good. That's
tradition,
very
or
true.
the way mom did it or grandma did it. It's like, how about what God says and do what he does? We
Wow.
say oftentimes, honey, God will not bless your mess. And we'll come back to that in a few weeks. But the truth is, if I'm in a place, I'm in a place. God will deliver me out of that place, but he has no desire to feed you staying in a place that he's not called you to. So oftentimes we got to quit listening to us and start listening to God.
Amen. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, it's so true. And what is it? Pride makes us not want to accept help. It makes us not
Yeah.
want to do something different. I mean, there's just, like you said, tradition, the way that we usually do things makes us not ever want to change.
It's certainly pride that says, I got my way in this, I'll get out of it. That sounds good, but that's not probably the way to get out
Right.
of that. You
Right.
got yourself in it for a reason. Maybe I need help outside of me to get me
Yeah.
out. So that really has to become a practical. We've got
So
the point,
good.
but today's practical is listen for wisdom's cry. It's
Yeah.
louder than you think. And how do I get to hear loud? I start toning down all the other voices. You turn everything else down. You've got to quit talking so that you can hear what God says. And it is loud. The word, when I read it, it screams most of the time because there is a plan, but you've got to hear it. And it's louder than you think. The best thing I can give you for a practical tip is crowd out foolishness. In other words, I've got to quit listening to that. I've got to turn the station off. Sometimes it means turn the TV off. Sometimes it means putting away social media and listen to God. Oftentimes we're afraid of silence, but that silence will hear God loudly when we crowd out all the other stuff, which I call foolishness. If it's not wisdom, it's foolishness. And so crowd out foolishness and listen to wisdom. That's today's practice.
That's so very good,
Yeah.
Pastor West. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm
Welcome,
excited. I
man.
love it. I learned today.
I'm
I
excited.
learned
Look,
today.
we are going to get so much out of
Yeah.
this. And so I'm glad you're listening today. And I feel you. We feel you.
Yeah.
Man, we have been in some pits in life before. But I promise you, wisdom will help you from here. But you've got to listen and
And
it's screaming.
remember what we took them to very early on
Yeah.
in these podcasts. where it tells us, the Bible tells us, if you lack wisdom, ask God for
Ask
it.
it.
Ask
It's
God
the
for
principal
it.
thing.
Trust the Lord.
It
Amen.
has to be the filter for
Yeah.
life. And it's not working. What's the best adage we hear anymore? They say, how's that working for you?
Right.
Man, you do that with most of your life. You're like, it's not. Okay, great. Where's wisdom? That's going to get us from here.
Well, another episode.
Yeah.
Down. Yeah. So we're thankful that you joined us today. Make sure you're subscribing to all of our platforms and just join us back here next week for another episode of The Principal Thing.
We'll see you next week.
If this encouraged you, share it with somebody and come back for another dose of practical truth from Proverbs.
Until then, take your principal step and keep growing.